everyone, and welcome once again to the bursting and uncontainable comic book vault. It's time for new acquisitions. We've got lots and lots of new comics to review for you, both me and superhero enthusiasts. Later on at the end of the show with books Captain Logan didn't read, I got 11 for you. Lots of DC, a little bit of Marvel, and a smattering of other stuff. Lots of new number ones this week. Lots of new, more jumping on points, really. So this is a really good week to jump into a comic book store and try out some things that maybe you've been on the fence about or didn't get a chance to jump onto when they first got started. I want to say thanks as always to Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas for helping us out with the show. And if you're ever in the Kansas City area, be sure to check out Elite Comics. Before we get started, I want to thank everybody for your feedback last week on my idea of splitting this show up into individual videos. I have decided, based on your feedback, not to do that, and we're going to keep the show just like it is. Change up the format a little bit though, but it still is just visually, just aesthetically, and we're going to try out this. We're going to try out this new format. Try showing you panels behind me and stuff, and see how that works out for us. And anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it with DC books. First up today, we got Batman 66, two stories in this one like usual. The first one is by Jeff Parker with art by Craig Rousseau, and it is the return of a villain I am not familiar with because I have not seen every episode of 60s Batman, though I plan to remedy that as soon as it finally comes to DVD this year. This is a villainess named Zelda the Great, and no, she has nothing to do with Link. Zelda the Great is an escape artist character who was used in third season, like I said, in an episode that I missed, but one of the Batgirl episodes. And in this, it's used kind of as a response to the criticisms, I think, that there haven't been enough death traps in this book. And so Zelda comes in, and her big plan, it's a really unusual villain plot, and I think it's hilarious. It has nothing to do with stealing anything. I guess she was a thief originally. Here, it's all about her trying to learn how to do Batman's great escapes, and she doesn't like that he has this knowledge that she doesn't, that he's so much better at escaping from traps than she is. And so she kidnaps Batman and Robin and puts them in really absurd, hilarious, the 66-esque death traps, really horrible, scary things, and forces them to get out of it to show her how they do it. And it's a little cartoony in kind of a, but in a fun way, where, of course, like in the show, the way they escape these traps are absolutely is always absolutely ridiculous. But it feels like sort of a Warner Brothers cartoon in that they keep getting put into death trap after death trap, and she thinks she has the upper hand and is able to finally get what she wants out of them. But at the last minute, they prevail, and so she tries it again, and she keeps doing the same thing, but always achieves the same results, which is not getting anything done. And it's really funny. There's a trap with scorpions, and the way Batman gets out of it is a really traditional 60s Batman gag. I really liked it, where there's some trick that he learned from someone in his travels around the world. That's always a big Bruce Wayne or a big Adam West Batman thing. So anyway, I thought it was hilarious. I really enjoyed that. The art in this one I didn't really care for as much as a lot of the other issues. It's a little under-detailed for this book. It's a little bit cartoony, not in the right way. I have really been enjoying all the Art Deco stuff in this book, and we've had a variety of artwork, like we've had a variety of different kinds of stories in this, so that's okay with me. I don't think it has to look the same all the time, but Batman's head is kind of strange, a little bit inconsistent. There's a lot of blank backgrounds with nothing going on. It's really under-detailed, so I don't really care for the art in that section, but the story I thought was really funny. And the second story in here is an Alfred story, and it's by Tom Peaver with art by Chris Sprouse, and I liked Chris Sprouse's art quite a bit better. This is not your average villain kind of plot. It's a switcheroo story in which Alfred's cousin, who looks almost identical to him, who just gets out of prison and is trying to make everybody think that he's gone that he's gone straight. By the way, he goes to a halfway house for the halfway crooked. I think that's really hilarious. As soon as he gets out, he immediately takes Alfred's place, and he wants to live the high life and doesn't realize how difficult the life of a butler is. The way that Batman ends up forcing him to show his true colors, I thought was really clever, and I really enjoyed that story. I thought it was really funny. So in all, as I always have so far, 9 issues in, recommending this book. Really funny, really great stuff, and like I said, I'm really enjoying the variety of different stories that they're telling in this. I feel like I get a lot of bang for my buck with this book. Next up, let's take a look at another all-ages book from DC. It's Scribblenatus Unmasked number 3. This is by Josh Elder with art by Adam Archer. Boy, this is a lot of fun. This is frantic, crazy, fast-paced hilarity, and I've been liking this series. Really enjoyed this issue. This is really solidifying for me the feel, the tone of this book, the kind of balance between pseudo-serious but over-the-top storytelling and really cute, silly stuff. It's blending all of that really well. I still find myself really surprised by the sheer amount of words in this book. I guess I shouldn't, since it's Scribblenauts and it's all about language, it's all about words, but it takes a while to read one of these. There's a lot of words on a page. I don't think it's overwritten because there are so many characters, and it wants to make sure that everybody gets a personality, gets things to say, that everybody's in character, and that it makes sense, and that your favorite characters actually get to be a part of this. Scribblenauts Unmasked, of course, is based on a video game, and I played a lot of that game, and it's all about kind of creating this cute tone for the entire DC universe, but as I've said before, still allowing everybody to more or less talk the way they do in the more adult, serious stuff. And I don't know how they strike that balance, but it's really fun. It's really impressive. There are a lot of characters in this. It's kind of as much about DC trivia as it is anything else. So that you can read this, and the attention to detail is great. You can go, oh, I recognize that. Oh man, there's somebody I never thought I'd see, and somebody I haven't seen in a long time, that kind of thing. A Psycho Pirate is in this. There's somebody I haven't seen utilized in a long time. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. So anyway, in this issue, we finally discover at the end of this who is behind everything, and it's nice to see our characters kind of put 2 and 2 together, and that it's not a big character reveal in that the character just shows up and announces himself. It's kind of nice to get to see everybody work together and figure it out, because this is a book all about problem solving, all about being creative, and so the whole way through, I thought I knew who it was, and then at the end it turns out that it's not who I thought it was. There's a red herring thrown in at the end of the second issue. You think it's going to be Brainiac, and then it turns out it's somebody else, which is really neat. So we've got this big story that's this big villain plot that basically serves to use every single character humanly possible, and it's a plot that is about possession, and it's about getting all of these heroes and villains possessed by whoever the big bad guy turns out to be at the end of this. And like I said, just finding a way to utilize all these characters. There's a lot of really funny gags in this. There's this whole thing about Maxwell, who is the main character in Scribblenauts, who is able to write down anything and create things. That's the whole gimmick behind the game. And Maxwell in this has Batman's cell phone number, or actually his phone number on his cell phone. He calls the Batcave, and of course it's a red phone. And he keeps calling Batman just randomly to say hello, and he's trying to be pals with Batman, and Batman won't have it. And that's really funny. There's all the Batman stuff's great. There's a moment where Maxwell and Lily try to get Batman to give them a hug, and that's really funny too. All the stuff with the Justice League, it's kind of heartfelt and warm, but also really silly and ridiculous. And anyway, I'm really enjoying this. It's fantastic. The art is colorful and bright and spastic, and I'm really enjoying this. So if you've got kids, this is a great pick right now. I would love to see more all ages stuff from, frankly, both DC and Marvel that's not necessarily based on a TV show or a video game. But I feel like with Batman 66, with Scribblenauts, you've got some books right now that are making a really good case for taking those properties and running with them in comic books. There's really quality storytelling and fun. I just wish that we had more stuff that was a little bit more original, that we were kind of taking some risks on stuff, but just based on what we have right now, this is definitely one of the best All Ages books out there right now. My last DC book for this week is Superman Unchained #6 by Scott Snyder, with stunning artwork by Jim Lee, as always, but here especially, just magnificent stuff. I really, really enjoyed this issue, and have found myself liking this the last 2 or 3 issues more and more, where I was a little bit unsure about it, kind of clueless as to where it was going at the beginning. I thought it was kind of slow. Interested to see how this is going to read put all together. And just as I'm finally starting to really like this, to really feel like it is perhaps the big major, big deal kind of event thing that DC touted it out to be, they're ending it at issue 9, when originally I think they were supposed to go at least to an issue 12. Okay, whatever. I hate that, because I'm really liking it now. This is a really kind of tense and politically charged kind of story, which is not my cup of tea so much with Superman stories, but I can't deny that the writing is good. What we have here is a kind of 3-pronged power struggle between the United States government, Superman, and this hate group called Ascension that essentially wants to destroy most of humanity in order to get rid of Superman and Wraith. So basically they have this kind of it's a very X-Men thing. They have this very anybody with abilities greater than ours, we're afraid we're going to get replaced. It's a story about paranoia. They've got that kind of attitude. So they want to, so they think in order to ensure the eventual freedom of humanity, we have to get rid of all the aliens. And so they want to create nuclear winter to block out the sun and make it to where Superman and Wraith are completely inept with their power set. You also have the United States government, who doesn't trust Superman, but not so much because I don't think that he's got superpowers, as just they don't really trust anybody and they have to control everything. So it's also a story very much about control. And Superman, as you would hope he would, and this is why I like the story, is just simply trying to do the right thing. And yet he's starting to get disenfranchised with humanity, which is kind of an interesting place to see Superman go. It's not changing his decision-making yet, and I'm interested to see if it does. It's like humanity itself has turned against Superman, and it's not really that. It's not like the people at large seem to hate Superman or anything, but the people that matter, the people that are in control right now, are pushing against him so hard that you can see him trying really hard not to crack around the edges and continue to try to do the right thing, to try to save an ungrateful populace, and so or at least an ungrateful government. And so the end of this is a really exciting cliffhanger, and that has to do with all that. And I was kind of surprised because Superman kind of foils one plot in the middle of this, and then it feels like it's winding down. It feels like the whole story is almost over, and like we're getting to the conclusion. The beginning of this really feels like the climax of this whole story, and it looks like we're not there yet, because it's not as much about the end of the world sort of story, the big giant nuclear missiles, everybody's gonna die kind of story, as it is the personal story of Superman and how he can retain his idealism and his altruism, and in the face of the government not trusting him and frankly not allowing him to do that. I thought about something in the middle of this that's kind of a technical thing about reading comic books, and that is, I find sometimes I'll get to the most exciting and big deal epic portion of a comic book, and I'll accidentally breeze right through it and not realize how important it was. I had that reading this, because you as the reader are somewhat in control of the pacing in a comic book. When I know I've talked about this before, but when you're watching a movie and you have like a big, huge explosion, the filmmakers can elongate that out as long as they need to for you to really feel the impact and the weight of it. And when you're reading a comic book, it really doesn't matter how big or bombastic an explosion or something is. I guess you kind of slowed the reader down a little bit if you do it in a big full-page spread, because you might look at a huge moment in a big full-page spread and kind of sit on it a little bit longer because you're looking at all the detail. But when you do it in multiple panels, and there's not a lot of words on the page, and it's so easy to just breeze right through, it kind of messes with the pacing, and that's one of the limitations with the comic book medium. I think it's also sometimes one of the great things about the comic book medium is that I can read it at my own pace, and I feel like I have a little bit more control over my experience. It's something I really like about comic books, but something that can sometimes be detrimental is I'll get through a really important thing, especially action stuff, and like kind of zone out a little bit on accident, just because there's not a lot of words to read, and the words really slow down your reading experience in a comic book and help it to be paced maybe more the way the author intended. And so yeah, I got past that section, and it was kind of the big, most important thing Superman did in the issue, and I totally missed it. It spaced right over it. I had to go back and look at it again and go, oh, that's what happened. Okay. Anyway, but back to the book itself. Really enjoyed this, and I can't wait to read the next issue, which I don't know that I've said with this book before. I really. It's a really satisfying cliffhanger, and I found myself going, oh man, I wish I had the next one right now. So I'm glad that book is finally doing that for me. And once again, fantastic art from Jim Lee. Let's jump across the street now over to Marvel and take a look at Daredevil #1 by Mark Waid with art by Chris Samney. And yeah, same team relaunching the same series. This is not a completely unprecedented thing. Certainly this happens sometimes when you get like a 10-12 issue run, it gets popular, you go into a new story arc, and the company wants to make sure that everybody that has heard about it gets a chance to jump on, kind of increases sales, that kind of thing. That's understandable. What I like about this, and of course I complain sometimes about renumbering things just because I'm kind of old school. Sometimes I can be kind of a purist about this kind of thing, where I'm like, well, but I don't want volume 515 of Batman down the road. But anyway, with this it makes perfect sense, and because the status quo is so new, so fresh, and is really legitimately a fantastic jumping on point. Where we've got Daredevil right now is he is living in San Francisco, having had to leave New York because he lost his practice, and he's now outed himself as Daredevil finally. And so all of the stuff that's been haunting him for years and years about his identity getting out has finally caught up with him. Waid has finally paid off all those kind of loose threads, and now he's having to make his way in a new city and figure out how to set up shop there, figure out where he's going to live, and how to be Daredevil there. And all those details are really fascinating. What I love about what Waid does with Daredevil, and I always rant and rave about this book, this first issue of the series is no exception. And in fact, I think this first issue is actually really something special. What I love about what Waid does is he gives us these details so that it can be an over-the-top, fun comic book, superhero comic with outrageous, outlandish things that can't happen in real life, grounded with all of this human stuff that makes it feel real. And we really get into Daredevil's head, and he really becomes a person for us. And one of the things that really impresses me about this issue in particular, and Waid is always good at this, but here it's exceptional, is all of his vivid use of imagery. Or rather, vivid descriptions of things. The way that Daredevil views the world is always the thing I latch onto the most in this book. Here, now that everybody knows that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, somebody has come to him with a kidnapping plot and asked, him to help find their little girl. And so his life has really changed a lot now. People aren't coming to him just as a lawyer anymore. They know he's Daredevil, and so he's able to put all of his skills to use without having to hide anything, and just changed the dynamic for him. It's immediately fresh and different and interesting. And so anyway, he kind of does this auditory forensics thing, which is really fun to watch. He's using all of his senses, but particularly his sense of hearing, to pick up on things about the case that nobody else notices. And like I said, the word choice and the vivid use of language to describe how Daredevil views the world and how he's able to put all this together is really cool. One of the things that's really fun about this too is that because Daredevil's in a new city and he doesn't know it very well, he's having to figure out how to get around, and there's a lot of really realistic contrast between New York City and San Francisco, and Daredevil keeps wishing that the buildings were closer together because it's hard to jump from building to building. There's a scene where he tries to swing on a palm tree, and that's really hard for him, and it's difficult to do. So like I said, all those realistic things put into this heightened comic book world. It's very Stan Lee the way it's done here, and also this is such a gripping, exciting kind of issue. There is this fantastic chase where Daredevil is. I don't want to give too much away about this, but regarding the kidnapping plot, there's this wonderful chase all the way through San Francisco, and there's such a fantastic sense of urgency and suspense in this, really subverting expectations. The ending had my jaw to the floor. This is a wonderful first issue, and as I said, great jumping on point. If you weren't reading Daredevil, but you've heard me and Dan and a super enthusiast also reading this book, if you've been hearing us talk about ranting and raving how great this book is, and you've been wondering about it, but you didn't want to pay the money to go buy the rest of it, you don't have to read anything that came before this, I don't think, to at least to read this issue, and probably moving forward. It'll be pretty easy to keep up with. I'm going to go this far with this issue. First of all, I think this is a better first issue than Wade's first issue, and I think that this is the kind of book, this is the kind of first issue that might turn around a first-time comics reader. If you've never read comic books in your life and you're not sure about the medium and you don't know if you would enjoy the kinetic panel-to-panel sort of storytelling, this is such a good use of the form and such a good argument for the form that I think a first-time comic reader reading this really might be turned around about reading comic books and might want to continue with comics. I'm going to go that far. And speaking of super fantastic jumping on points, let's go over to Iron Man number 23 point now. This is by Kieran Gillen with art by Luke Ross. Boy, did I enjoy this issue. I have been looking forward to the Malekith thing for quite a while now, and I was chomping at the bit to read it. So we've got Malekith the Accursed going around and trying to get all of the Mandarin's rings, and the rings have chosen various villains, or people that they're kind of turning into villains, some of them, based on how much they hate Iron Man, and kind of a way for Mandarin to get his revenge on Tony Stark post-mortem. And so Malekith, of course, was kind of a bad move on the part of one of the rings, because he is too power mad and too powerful to stop at just the one ring. And so he's kind of pulling a Thanos and going around to get all the rings, kind of like Thanos did with the Infinity Gauntlet. And this issue is quirky and silly and thought-provoking and disturbing and dramatic, and all of those things rolled into one. This opens up with some really creepy Malekith stuff just to set the stage. It feels at the beginning a lot like a Thor comic, and it's really kind of bridging the gap between those two things. I really like that. If you've been reading Jason Aaron's Thor and you haven't been reading any Iron Man at all, you're going to feel right at home at the beginning of this, and I think it propels you forward pretty well. It gets you right into Iron Man's world, kind of using Thor's as a window show. And there's a lot of talk about Thor in this too. Iron Man is dealing with Malekith by himself, and he has really good reasons for that. He is afraid of dealing with Asgard because he doesn't want it to become a political thing, and he doesn't want to hurt Asgard's reputation and mess up Thor's relationship there. And so he decides to do this on his own, and there's this amusing term that's coined, black magic ops, which I really like. But anyway, after an opening with Malekith, we jump over to Iron Man, and Tony Stark is discovering that some of his problems that he has to deal with, his regular suit problems, as he calls them, are also turning into Iron Man problems. And there's this really funny, goofy idea of an Iron Man musical, which I think might be slightly poking fun at Spider-Man in the Dark, especially because of the fact that it doesn't go well, and it's really artsy-fartsy, and then the guy that's directing it gets fired. And then one of the Rings takes him over, and so you have this really disgruntled music theater artist, that artiste as he's called in this, that wants to kill Iron Man because he feels like he's ruined his musical, which I think is just really, really funny. And then immediately after that, it gets really twisted. This is kind of that classic exploration of the notion of science versus magic, that science, when it gets too advanced, is indistinguishable from magic, and the Thor movie dealt with that quite a bit, and this is doing that in a really sophisticated way, I think. You've got Tony Stark, who we're told in this, if you haven't been reading Iron Man, and I haven't, that about a year ago, Iron Man, in his lack of understanding about magic and trying to figure it out, got in a really messed up place. And it's fun to get to see him have to deal with the idea that there might be such a thing as magic, and that you can't explain everything. But he's making a really good case in a lot of things where someone will say this is magic. No, that's quantum physics. The more you understand it, the more it becomes actual science. It's going to be interesting to see in this kind of war between science and magic in this arc, which one ultimately ends up winning out. The thing I really latched onto was this notion of how both science and magic have their own kind of special language and code, and that you say these words that sound like gobbledygook, but they actually mean something, and they make things happen. And these days, with the kind of technology we have with computers, both are true. There's a character in this who doesn't have hands, and again, I haven't been reading this book, so I was a little bit lost in a couple places. I'll say that. It's mostly a good jumping on point, but there are some places where I was like, man, I wish I'd been reading this book, because a lot of these characters and ideas seem really interesting, and I kind of wish I hadn't just been dropped in, but I was able to catch up well enough. Anyway, there's a character who doesn't have hands and has to use voice recognition software in order to deal with computers, and that's used as a way to discuss the idea of magic language versus science language. And I think that's all really cool. And the only real criticism I have about this is that it opens, again, after the Malekith thing, with Tony Stark saying that this is not a story that has anything to do with the previous arc. And then it totally does. I thought it was really kind of clever, actually. It opens up. I read one or two issues in the previous arc, and there's a lot of stuff about Tony Stark being adopted, and he has a half-brother, and I think it's just a half-brother. And anyway, named Argo, and he opens this up saying, I just found out this and this and this, but this story has nothing to do with that. And then later on, and I realize that Tony Stark is not yet involved in this, so maybe the idea is that he just doesn't know that this story is going to have anything to do with that, but it's a little bit awkward because I thought that was really clever. I was like, oh, neat, okay. You're acknowledging the previous arc, but you're telling everybody that hasn't read that arc, don't worry, you're going to be able to follow this. We're not going to throw anything in here that is going to require you to have kept up with the previous arc. And then suddenly Argo shows up, and I feel like I'm having to play catch up a little bit. So that's okay, because I am finding him intriguing, and I'm catching up okay. Gillen is doing a pretty good job of making it of giving us what we need to know to be propelled forward. Boy, I loved this issue, and I can't wait to continue on with this arc. Really fantastic stuff. If you are a Thor fan, I really think you need to be reading this. Really cool stuff with Malekith. And the last thing I'll say is I was really expecting this to be one of those things where Malekith is kind of working his machinations in the background, and then it was going to be 2, 3, 4 issues before he and Tony Stark finally butted heads. They actually have to go right up against each other physically immediately in this. Waste no time. Anyway, absolutely fantastic stuff. And now let's use all that talk about Malekith to segue over to Thor God of Thunder number 20. This is, wow, 20 already, this book. This is by Jason Aaron with art by Asad Ribic. And this is the second part of an arc that is really heavy on the environmental themes, which I was a little bit resistant to in the first part of this, just because I feel like we are so inundated with environmental stuff all the time, and like a lot of the time it just feels like kind of preaching to the choir stuff. It's like, yes, okay, killing endangered species is bad, and destroying all the rainforest is bad. Fine, yes, we all agree. And yet I am really digging this after this issue. The Roxxon president, who is ruthless in his obsession with wanting to not only make money at any cost, and he doesn't care about the environment, he actually is deliberately, almost on the level of a Captain Planet villain, trying to ruin the environment in order to gain what he wants to. He has this insane plan to get rid of as much fish as humanly possible by genetically engineered bears who gorge themselves until they're dead, just so that engineered fish made by Roxxon is the only way people can get fish. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I don't know why. I guess the heightened insane degree to which this villain is doing this stuff is kind of making all the environmental stuff feel a little bit fresher and a little bit less played out to me. And this is less about like social commentary, I think, and it's there, sure, and more about telling a broader story about the beginning and end of things, and how everything, including planets, fade away over time and diminish, and you give it enough time and nothing lasts forever. And that's really what the story's about. And you have these two subplots that are kind of working in tandem to deal with that idea, where you have the Roxxon stuff in the present, and then in the future you have future Thor. We're still dealing with the different time periods. We have future Thor going up against Galactus, who and of course I love Galactus, is my favorite thing, and I'm really enjoying this kind of new take on this idea, where Galactus sees the Earth as almost his arch nemesis, the planet itself, because he says he's through all of his existence, he's been able to eat and take the energy of every planet he's ever gone up against, but over and over and over again, the Earth has thwarted him. And now in the future, Earth is basically a dead ball, where everyone is gone. There are no humans left. It's completely post-apocalyptic, and Galactus has finally come back in order to get his vengeance on the Earth, and apparently, like. And that's why I say that this doesn't seem to be as preachy as I was a little bit worried it might be about the environmental stuff, because it's the universe, it's the galaxy, maybe even the universe at large, that is dying, and Galactus is having a hard time finding planets. They're few and far between, and finally he's come back to the Earth because there's no one to challenge him, and he's ready to finally get his sweet taste of victory against the Earth. I love that. And so you get these very clear motivations between Thor, who's of course now the Allfather, going up against Galactus. Galactus wants revenge on the Earth for defeating him so many times, and Thor feels like he owes it to the Earth, the planet itself. He talks about being a child of Gaia and all of that. The Earth is really personified here in very interesting ways, and he in contrast to Galactus, feels like he has to save the Earth because, as he says, the Earth has saved him so many times. He feels like he owes the planet itself. I really love all the big ideas in this, and I found it really challenging and thought-provoking, and also a lot of fun, but kind of disturbing in places. It made me really cringe with all of the big business politics and stuff, and it's over the top, and that makes it a little bit more palatable. It's a little more satirical in that way. But anyway, really recommending this. Jason Aaron has totally got me on board with this now after the second issue of this new arc, and I am highly recommending it. My last Marvel book this week is Uncanny X-Men number 19 Point Now. This is by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Chris Bocciolo. Lots of really good starting places this week. This is a really good time to jump into a comic book store and try out some books that you've been kind of wondering about. 19 Point Now, doing what the Point Nows are kind of for. Point Now, Point Ones, Point whatever, Point Now. It's silly, but it's helpful. So they've been putting number one on the top of a lot of these books, and they're not actually number ones, but that's supposed to tell you that it's a good place to start if you haven't been following this. And this is another one of those. So what we've got going on here is the beginning of Uncanny X-Men versus Shield, kind of very AVX in we're about to start this big war between two big major groups, good guy groups, generally speaking, in the Marvel universe, and there's a lot of really cool kind of intrigue and kind of behind the scenes machinations going on. We finally have brought back Mystique and are dealing with her again. She has been pretending to be Dazzler this whole time, and she now has gotten her hands on Dazzler, and she is trying to jumpstart a war with, or at least go against S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm not real sure if she actually is trying to force this war that's about to start, but stuff that she's doing is certainly getting us there. So anyway, we've got her on one side going against S.H.I.E.L.D., and then we've got S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to get their hands on Scott Summers. And they're using the New Mutant who got picked up, who got thrown out of the X-Men by Scott Summers last issue. And it's kind of nice that wasn't just kind of a one and done thing, but it's actually playing in really hard to the story right now. And of course, if memory serves, he got his memory somewhat wiped so that nobody could do just what S.H.I.E.L.D. is trying to do, get into his brain and figure out where Scott Summers is, and so that's going to become a big scary problem for him. Kind of fun that his last name is Bond. His name is David. I think David, and I guess his last name is Bond. That's what S.H.I.E.L.D. calls him. So that's kind of fun, since there's kind of this whole intrigue, secret agent vibe to this, and they're really capitalizing on that. There's a lot of fun moments of levity in this book, as Bendis always gives us, especially with Gold Balls. Gold Balls, once again, my favorite New Mutant. He's so much fun, and he's really eaten all this up, even as how new and overwhelming it is. And he's kind of our comic relief character in this, but I'm really enjoying him. And he finally got a costume, and it's a really absurd costume. I really like it. The X-Men hear about a New Mutant. They go to find him, and then it turns out maybe it's a trap. and then crazy action ensues after that. Pretty dense issue. Quite a bit going on in this. Less spread out and decompressed than Bendis has been lately with these books, and I'm a lot more on board now. I have been enjoying this book, but I had lost interest a little bit. It's another one of those books where I started going, okay, reading this month to month. I'm not as thrilled and excited about reading it as I used to be. Maybe I should go back and refuel my enthusiasm for it by reading everything up to this point again. And then I read this issue, and I'm very excited to see where things go after this. All right, let's jump over to indies and not big two stuff, starting with Ninja Turtles Utrom Empire #3. This is by Paul Allor with art by Andy Kuhn. Andy Kuhn, of course, again, who drew I think the first issues of Ninja Turtles, and whose art has really grown on me since then. I especially like him for this sci-fi stuff, this intergalactic and interdimensional crazy sci-fi stuff. It looks like this is the last issue of this, and I'm surprised that this was done in only 3 issues, but the story is simple enough, and it's working. I was very satisfied with the end of this. This is mostly serving to tie up a bunch of loose ends and to kind of get us to the next big chapter of Ninja Turtles, and as I like so much with the Foot Clan miniseries that was done, this doesn't just serve to give us backstory, but it's also very much anchored in the current events and what's going on. I really didn't expect us to get as far with the Krang stuff in this as we did. When we get to the end of this, it is really setting up how the Turtles are going to finally try to go up against Krang. What exactly it is they're going to do to try to stop the creation of the Technodrome and all of that. I'm surprised by just how much of that is here already. And given all of the Foot Clan stuff that we just had, I really kind of thought it was going to take us even longer to get into all of this. And it's nice to see it coming back already. Krang is such a sympathetic villain in this, and I'm really surprised by how much I appreciate and care about this character and how no longer two-dimensional he is. I think it's really fun early on that Krang just seems like a power-mad despot, kind of on the order of Darkseid, and he seems like the same character in the original Ninja Turtle series. Here we get his motivations, and we understand why he's doing everything he's doing. And one of the most curious things to me about this is the notion that the Fugitoid has that Baxter Stockman is actually more malevolent and more twisted and scary than Krang is, because Baxter Stockman is all about himself. He has no sense of honor or duty or anything like that. He's completely self-motivated. Whereas Krang has what Baxter Stockman calls this kind of twisted duty to his race. And his whole plan, by the way, if you don't know, and we were given all of this in the first issue of this, is, and I think even before that, is Krang wants to terraform the Earth so that the Utroms can take it over and live there, and they want to supplant the human race and take it over. So it's a very classic alien invasion story, but the details in this really kind of enhance all of that and make it a lot deeper and a lot more interesting. So what we have, so what we're given here with the end of this and the end of the backstory with Krang is that Krang's father was basically crazy and obsessed with his own fame and power, and is actually kind of like Baxter Stockman, which is really interesting. I like that parallel. And a lot of why Krang is doing what he's doing is because his father was so obsessed with his own glory that he almost destroyed his whole race in his attempts to take over other planets. And so Krang, sort of in a Lex Luthor, Lionel Luthor sort of situation, wanting to be better than his father, and his legacy is to save his race, while his father's legacy was to destroy it. And it makes me more empathetic toward him. It makes me like him more. And even though he's willing to destroy a whole other race, he's willing to destroy our race. It's hard not to sort of appreciate, at least to a degree, what he's doing and why. I cannot believe how three-dimensional and fleshed out Krang, of all people, has become in this book. It's absolutely fantastic. Next up, let's go to a press I've never heard of. This is Red Circle Comics, and it's The Fox by Dean Haspiel and Mark Waid. So this is the second printing of The Fox, and I just picked this up because I hadn't heard of it, and it's Mark Waid, and I was curious, and I'm trying to broaden my mind and try out new stuff. So why not an obscure sounding superhero that is brand new? This is let's see, this is drawn by Alan Pasalacqua, and the plot is by Dean Haspiel, but Mark Waid wrote the dialogue, and fantastic as always dialogue from Mark Waid. I want to give you a quick example of what I mean by Mark Waid's incredible command of language and the vivid way he writes. Mark Waid is he's a veteran comic book writer, but he's also a really good just writer. He knows how to use language. He knows how to put things in non-cliche terms that you've never heard before, that are fresh and evoke really great imagery. So at the beginning of this, the Fox, out of costume, is tied up and being attacked, and he says, I just gotta focus, which isn't easy when your brain and your skull are moving in different directions. What a great way to give us that sentiment there. And so anyway, the idea of the Fox is very simple. He is a reporter that, and by the way, this whole idea uses a whole lot of old and kind of obvious comic book tropes and throws them all into one package. You have a reporter who is also a superhero, and the gimmick is he at one time felt like his life was too normal and dull, and so he decided to use this superhero identity as a way to bring stories to him, and so it was a way to make his life more exciting. I like, by the way, that he lives in a place called Impact City, but he also used it to kind of proliferate his career, and he got more than he bargained for. He bit off more than he could chew, and so now he wants the opposite. He's looking for the normal life. He's tired of being a superhero. He's sick of being a freak magnet. This story is called Freak Magnet, and the crazy loony supervillains are always somehow winding up in his lap because he decided to become a superhero. And so he's got that kind of Spider-Man thing of he very often wants to take off the costume, but his sense of responsibility won't allow him to do that. And it's not like the most original idea in the world, but you take all these things together and create something that seems kind of new. And it's also parroting a lot of superhero stuff, and can get kind of off the wall and silly, and really enjoyed it. You've got this woman calling herself Madam Satan, which is a fun, silly name for a supervillain, and she pretends to be this kind of tycoon that is starting this new big social network. A lot of social networking plots right now in comic books, and they took MySpace and Facebook and shoved them together and called it MyFace, which is really funny, especially given when you finally find out what she actually looks like, and that she's not exactly human, and it becomes all about the face and the way that you try to present yourself. The thing that really surprised me is that there's a moment where Mark Waid puts his famous scathing criticism of Man of Steel right on the page, and it's incredibly blatant. and I kind of thought it was a little bit too on the nose, and yet it's fair enough. So especially because of the kind of traditional superhero thing this is, where it's doing that thing that a lot of superhero stories are trying to do right now. Jessica Cristelli's doing it with Red Knight, where you have a more traditional superhero with a more kind of altruistic worldview, more of that sense of there's always a way. And they're thrown into a more pessimistic society that has more of the might makes right mentality and the every man for himself, and you do whatever you have to do to survive. That kind of mentality, and how does the more noble character work within the confines of that world? And so, it fits, but if you know about Mark Waid and you know how much he loathed that movie, really jumps out at you, and I was kind of shocked by it. Anyway, I'm recommending this one. I really enjoyed it. It's not brilliant or anything. It's not an especially fresh thing. I think that Mark Waid's dialogue really elevates the whole thing to another level that it might not have had had it been written by somebody else. Now we're back to the unabashedly quirky Loki, Ragnarok and Roll from Boom Studios. This is the second of a 4-issue miniseries with written by Eric M. Esquivel and art by Jerry Gaylord. By the way, I thought it was hilarious toward the end of this that there's a band called Gaylord of the Rings, named after Jerry Gaylord. It's really funny. Anyway, so premise of this book, if you missed it last time, is Loki of a different Asgard than the one in Marvel, who comes from a land of every single pantheon you've ever heard of, every kind of mythology created by the thoughts of man has come to Earth in order to become a rock god. And he's basically given up his Asgardian heritage, and he's built this huge cult following on Earth. And there's a lot of, in this particular issue, a lot of really interesting discussion about why people idolize figures and symbols like rock bands and actors and people like that, and how we will often kind of project, as Loki says here, project ourselves onto them, and because of society that has told us that it's not okay to be to celebrate our own successes, we have to obsess over the successes of these huge cultural icons, and so it's a way to deal with our own insecurities and that kind of thing. And Loki is kind of preaching this message of don't do that. Be your own god. It's great that you like us, but don't worship us as if unto a god. We're leading by example. Do what you want to. And Loki is incredibly sympathetic and engaging, and I'm really impressed with how much fun he is. And once again, turning the whole Loki Thor thing on its head, where Thor is a complete meathead and doesn't really have much of a personality and really just hits things, and yet he's having to step up here now because his brother is gone, and because the other pantheons are now starting to blame Asgard for everything that Loki's doing, and Loki has broken the truce where nobody is supposed to go down to Earth and start kind of touting themselves up as a god like this, because you're not supposed to contradict any of the other pantheons. And so basically the other pantheons feel like Asgard has declared war on them because of what Loki is doing, but Loki doesn't doesn't care, and because he has, as he's preaching, he has this whole anti-establishment, I am my own god, I do whatever I please kind of mentality, and he doesn't care about the consequences. And so you got Hercules in this, and Hercules goes to Asgard and demands to know why they're doing what he thinks they're doing. Doesn't believe Thor when he says that Loki's acting of his own accord, and we get a really fun big brawl between them. And it's really fun to kind of compare those two characters and see how they're the same and how they're different. Anyway, I'm still really enjoying this. It's still ultra super cartoony. Not for your kids though. There is some blood and gore and that kind of stuff in it, but it's really a throwback to a lot of He-Man and things like that in a way, and also has that heavy metal aesthetic to it. So anyway, still recommending this. Really fun book. Really surprised by how much I'm liking this one. My last book this week is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Season 10, Number 1. This is by Christos Gage with art by Rebecca Isaacs. Man, was this fun. I really enjoyed this. I am not caught up on Season 9. I did exactly the same thing between 8 and 9, but I wanted to go ahead and review the first issue just to tell folks whether or not I thought it was worth picking up, and it absolutely is. Also, I guess this is all I'm talking about the show. Can you read this without what came before? Can you jump onto this? I don't know if at this point anybody would even necessarily care to do that, but I don't know, maybe you just got into Buffy or something on Netflix or whatever, and you're interested in the comics, but you don't want to go back, whatever. This is pretty readable without knowing what came before. It does, for me, help that I know the series really well, and that I read some of 8 and some of 9, so the current status quo isn't as jarring as it would be if I was coming at this just off a 7. But anyway, basically where things are right now is that magic is back, but magic is a little bit different, and this story is called New Rules, and that is talking about both the magic and also vampires, and we discover here that there are some vampires that have different rules, different powers, different abilities. We don't know exactly how to deal with them, and mostly what Buffy is having to deal with in this is kind of what she's been dealing with all this time, which is how to keep everybody together, how to be the mentor figure without Giles, without her old mentor figure. And she's really having to grow up and step up and mature, and this is all about maturity. And a lot of this issue really is kind of catching people up to speed. It seems to be really conscious of potential new readers, and I appreciated that, but also thought that it was a little bit too explainy. There are so many characters in this, I kind of don't know what you do to combat that. But it was kind of an issue. I'm not saying that there's not enough story being told in this, because I think there is, but it's really wordy. Having said that, the language is fantastic. Gage has such a good voice for all of these characters. He really knows how to do all the Whedonisms and things, I think, without them getting too much in the way and in your face. Everybody is talking just the way I remembered them talking in the show, and there's a lot of like the status is quo and what the what and all those that sort of lingo. It felt kind of familiar. I sort of felt at home coming back to this and reading again. I really need to get caught back up with 9, and I enjoyed this so much that it just reminded me of how good the Buffy comics have been, and it looks like they're going in a sure direction. The relationships and things are kind of interesting. Seeing where so Xander and Dawn were a thing. I didn't know that because I haven't finished. Okay, so there were a few things that really kind of hit me and shocked me that I didn't know about. Seeing the way that this book with Buffy and with Angel and Faith are crossing is also really cool. And I figured Angel and Faith was a book that was just going to go through season 9 and quit. I guess it sold well enough. They're keeping it around. We are still doing this as kind of two shows working or going parallel to each other like Buffy and Angel did. Boy, it really feels like Buffy is so back. I really enjoyed all of this. So anyway, I don't know if I'm going to keep on this right now. I've been kind of buying this series in trade. I need to catch back up on it. But I will, even if I don't read it in singles as it's coming out, I'm certainly going to get all of it in trade eventually, and I'll probably review them in complete stories, but I may go ahead and just stay on this. I enjoyed this so much. And let's go over to Book of the Week now. My favorite Book of the Week, the pick it up, don't miss it. If you buy nothing else, this is the issue you should get, is Daredevil #1. Fantastic for people that haven't been reading it, just as brilliant as it has been if you have. I tend to pick Daredevil a lot, but there was no way around it this time. What a really thrilling and gripping issue, and what a great use of the medium. And cover of the week this time, it was no contest. Iron Man number 23 point now. I really like the image of Malekith holding up Iron Man's broken mask with his face in it. Really cool. And of course he's wearing all of the rings, and that's what he's trying to do, and what he's all about in this. Really like how simplistic of a cover it is with just the white background. All you need is that hand and that image. It's so menacing. I really liked it. Now, let's end off the show with books that Captain Logan didn't read with Superhero Enthusiast.
Hello, Geekvolutionaries. I am Alex, Superhero Enthusiast, once again here with BCLDR, books Captain Logan didn't read. And I'm not going to start with Adventures of Superman this time. I'm going to start with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Nemo, Roses of Berlin. What the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen books have been doing for the past little while is just kind of focusing on specific characters and seeing just sort of individual stories within their lives. It's not really a team thing anymore since Volume 3 wrapped up, at least for the time being. What they have been doing, though, is focusing on Captain Nemo. And not the Captain Nemo from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's his daughter, who is actually a character from another piece of fiction, because basically League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, just a mouthful, has expanded beyond just the Victorian era and has become basically, what if all of fiction ever existed in the same universe? So Jenny Diver from the Threepenny Opera, Bertolt Brecht, is Nemo's daughter, which is brilliant. She first appeared in Volume 3, but she's the focus of this. She's somewhat older now. She's still captaining the Nautilus. This one, though, is set during World War II, and World War II in this sort of pastiche universe is not headed... the Germans aren't led by Adolf Hitler. They're led by Adenoid Hinkle, who was Charlie Chaplin's satire of Hitler in The Great Dictator, which is really clever. Germany in this looks crazy. Berlin is just nuts. It's, I guess, designed by the guy who built the city in Metropolis, and the Metropolis robot makes an appearance in this. Basically, Captain Nemo's daughter, who's working with this kind of air pirate dude, and I guess in a relationship with him, went down, and so she thinks that her daughter has been captured in Berlin by the Germans, as she goes to rescue her, and that's the gist of the plot for this one. I won't spend too much time on it. It's just really, really good, and I could, since it is this gigantic pastiche, I'm sure there are a lot of references that are just way over my head, but I could probably spend hours and hours just pointing out, individual little characters and stuff. If you're a big fan of German Expressionism and like Fritz Lang and stuff, there are a lot of references to that in here, and a lot of characters that you'll be familiar with, so it's definitely worth checking out if that's your kind of thing. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Nemo, The Roses of Berlin, definitely worth checking out. I'm going to jump on over to Image with my only Image book this week, and that was Prophet number 43. I haven't got a chance to really talk about Prophet yet. It's a book that I guess has a lot of delays. It seems like it takes forever to get from one issue to the next for them to come out. But it's definitely one of the favorite things I'm reading. I'm somewhat unsure of how to describe it. It's sort of like if you took every crazy sci-fi thing ever and threw it into a blender, you would get Prophet. It's sort of like, every Outer Limits episode ever in one thing. Basically, Prophet is sort of like Glory in that it's this sort of throwaway Rob Liefeld character from the 90s that nobody really cared about, that's been totally revamped into this gigantic sort of space opera thing that's even bigger in scope than Star Wars is. The general gist of what's going on is, I guess once upon a time, there was this Earth Empire, like far in the future, and it I guess died out, but all of the John Prophet characters, who are all like clones of a single guy, have been reawakened, and they're basically trying to rebuild the Earth Empire. And there's lots of crazy alien stuff, and when I say alien, I don't mean Star Trek, wrinkled forehead kind of alien. I mean like alien, like weird non-humanoid things, and I love that. I love aliens. But basically, there's a couple different things that kind of go on in this issue. I won't go into too much detail if you haven't been following this, but humans, some of them have been kind of kept as prisoners and forced to fight, and there's some sort of evil, I guess, like queen, but I know it's sort of reminiscent, I guess, of like Jabba the Hutt and all that stuff in Return of the Jedi, this issue, and like the Rancor fight and all that. So if that's kind of your sort of thing, Prophet is definitely worth checking out. It's sort of a difficult book to follow, since each, I guess, individual issue often tends to focus on a specific character or a specific narrow part of this world, and by reading each issue, we sort of put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, and it can be hard to do, and especially hard to do since there are the delays, but even when I don't know what's going on, it's still one of the better books that I'm reading. It's just that good and that entertaining and that fun. It's really weird, crazy, space opera-y sci-fi, so if that's up your alley, I definitely recommend Prophet. It's one of the better things that Image is putting out right now. Now I'm going to jump into Adventures of Superman, this time number 47. I mentioned last time that this was already one of my favorite Superman stories ever, and holy crap, issue 2 for this story has really cemented that. What they're sort of doing is moving Superman ahead in time, sort of logically, so it's like it was last year, Superman's 75th anniversary of existing, and like Lois Lane is old and stuff, and he's this big hero who's inspired everybody. He never found that rocket ship though, but he does, I guess, sort of find it in this, in that there's supposed to be this big celebration for Superman, and Mxyzptlk shows up and kind of toys with Superman, and Superman has to fight like a giant statue of himself in this that's controlled by Mxyzptlk, which I thought was really funny, and sort of it's nicely symbolic of what I sort of feel is going on with Superman as a character right now, and that I don't really feel like DC gets Superman anymore, or like they're embarrassed by him or something. And this issue and this whole story seems to be focused on that whole idea of bringing Superman back to who that character is. And he's not supposed to be somebody that you're supposed to be able to relate to, really. He's supposed to be an inspirational figure, and I really, really like that. I'm curious to see where this goes in the final issue, since, like I mentioned last time, this is tied into Kamandi in the future, and like Kamandi's even an old man in the future, and Superman, I guess, has some type of larger plot, and Kamandi and all like the animal people from the future are actually trying to escape Earth, because it's kind of like Krypton was in its last days, and it's part of a larger thing with the third issue in this story. I guess we're gonna see how it all comes together, but this is really, really good, and I don't know, I guess maybe to go on a little bit of a rant, I'm just sort of tired at this point of things that I like, whether it be Superman or Wonder Woman or Star Trek and stuff, things that I like that are reasonably to marginally popular. Other people who don't like those things coming in and saying, oh, we totally need to change this thing to appeal to more people, and then them changing it to the point where it's not really that thing anymore. And I kind of feel like Superman has gone down that route, so because this is trying to, I guess, reclaim the character and bring him back to kind of his roots and away from sort of the darker, oh, he has to be relatable sort of thing, I'm really, really liking it. Not everybody has to like everything. Not everything has to be generic and appeal to a wider audience. There's plenty of room for niche things, and I think Superman maybe to some extent is like that. But I'm really digging this. If you like classic Superman, Adventures of Superman, number 47, definitely pick it up. My next book was also digital first, and that's Batman Beyond 2.0, number 16. This one was really, really cool. I mentioned before that I wasn't crazy about the previous story that they had done with the Man-Bats and all that stuff. This is just sort of a standalone in between story arcs and focuses a lot on kind of the relationship or sort of lack thereof between Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon. Given that this is riffing so much on the DC animated universe, yet somehow still in continuity with the New 52, I don't understand that. But we do see a lot of references to even very specific episodes within Batman the Animated Series, and that was great. And the art style in this one kind of reflected the animated series style, and that was really cool to see, since Bruce Timm is a master. But basically we see sort of why things, I guess, didn't totally work out between Dick and Babs in this universe. I was never really a fan of Barbara Gordon in the DC animated universe. I love the character a lot in the classic DC universe, but the DC animated universe version of her was just very, I guess, like selfish. Like, she was just very self-centered character and didn't really care about other people as much. It's all kind of about her, and she thought, everybody had a crush on her. And then they threw in that whole weird quasi-incestuous relationship between her and Batman, which was just gross, because she dated Dick Grayson for a while, and then it'd sort of be like, dating your son's girlfriend. But at the same time, Commissioner Gordon is sort of like a father figure to Batman, so it'd be sort of like also like dating your ersatz sister. So it's just, ew, it was creepy, and I never liked that they did that. But it did kind of break up the Bat family, so I guess it logically followed from what happened. But basically, like I said, we see sort of what happened, I guess, in between in here, and that she went off and married this other guy, Sam, who became a district attorney in the city. There's this batarang that gets passed kind of back and forth between Dick and Babs, I guess, throughout their lives, as sort of a memento kind of a thing. And it's the very same batarang from the two-parter that Batgirl first appears in, which was kind of a nice reference. But they sort of somewhat bury the hatchet here and sort of put things, or I guess bury the batarang here, so to speak. And I guess symbolically it breaks at the end of this, like Dick breaks it in half. And Terry kind of finds it at the end and it's like, I guess these things don't really last. And it's sort of like symbolic of the Bat family, and maybe they're hinting at things that are coming, I don't know. Dick and Babs are on good terms, but they're still not, they decided to not, I guess, continue to be friends, really, and keep sort of, I guess, a distance in there, despite the fact that they did miss each other. So, it's a really good issue. I definitely recommend it. If you're a fan of the animated series and Batman Beyond, of course, check this out, because this is, while it claims to be in the New 52 continuity, it's mostly not really. So, if you miss the DCAU, this is definitely up your alley. My next book from DC was a proper one, and that was Batman and Aquaman, number 29. Now, I haven't been following this book. I read Batman and Robin up until about Damian's death-ish, and it kind of fluctuated in quality. I always really liked the art, and I'm a big Aquaman fan. I have not liked New 52 Aquaman really at all. That's maybe another rant of mine. It's just I'm not a fan of Jeff Johns, and I didn't really like what he did there. I read it for a while and just it was not the character that I like. But it seemed like the book got a lot of praise, but it was like from people who had never read an Aquaman comic before, so it's like they don't really have any point of reference for what the character is and maybe should be like. But it was kind of cool to see him show up in this. I loved how, despite the fact that Batman was sort of written annoyingly and a little bit Frank Miller-ishly, I really got a sense that Aquaman and Batman knew each other well and were good friends, and that's something that we don't really get to see much of, because the only real Batman-Aquaman team-ups that I can really think about are like from the Brave and the Bold TV show, and that's a very, very different version of Aquaman as a character. A very good one, but is very different from the conventional version. So it was kind of cool to see like semi-classic Aquaman and semi-classic Batman sort of team up. But I guess what's going on in this, from what I was able to tell, is they're sort of searching for Damian, because Ra's al Ghul has stolen the bodies of Damian and Talia, I guess to try and resurrect them somehow. He's an evil supervillain. That's what he does. And so, Batman's all trying to track him down, and Aquaman gets involved here. I wasn't really crazy about the way Aquaman was drawn in this. He was very kind of beefcake, very much. He reminded me a lot of sort of the body types in the Arkham games, and like really, really sort of muscular, but like heavy set muscular. And that doesn't make any sense for the character because like he's Aquaman, he's a swimmer. If you look at swimmers, they're very lean, tall, thin types of people to be very aerodynamic. So I don't know. I would like for there to be more diversity in terms of body types in superheroes because they all have different powers. But Aquaman gets to use his powers in this in really cool ways. He gets teased a lot for being lame, and I tease him sometimes for being kind of lame. But if you plan the story right, he can be really, really awesome and a really great asset. It looks like he's only going to be in this one issue, this one team up for Batman ampersand, and it looks like Batman next time is going to be teaming up with another big Justice League character. I won't say who it is, but I'm probably going to pick up that one too because it's a character that I also really like. So Batman and Aquaman, even if I guess you haven't been following the story like me, this was relatively easy to pick up and know what was going on. So I guess recommended. My last DC book this week was Wonder Woman number 29. I did my whole rant about Wonder Woman last time. I won't get into it. This is just sort of a fun Greek mythology book, and as such, it is pretty cool. It's very, very weird, and it's hard to talk about without spoiling since kind of, I guess, the big thing in this issue is on the cover. Wonder Woman finally takes on the mantle of the god of war since Ares has passed away in this series. Basically what's been going on though is Olympus has been fought over by Apollo, who was the king for a while, and the firstborn, who was, I guess, Zeus's firstborn. And firstborn's a real a-hole. He's not a nice guy at all. And basically Apollo had to sort of commit suicide to almost beat him, but it didn't work. He didn't beat him. And Hera gets her abilities back in this. She was sort of depowered and made mortal for a while, but the gist of this one is kind of all of the different aspects and things that have been going on in this book have kind of converged, and I guess Wonder Woman is going to be the god of war now. The Amazons in this had been turned to clay, which sort of something that I guess happened in Justice League, the animated series, in the Paradise Lost episode, that's what it's called, with Felix Faust. I guess they were turned to stone, but same dealio. But they get revived in this as well, and it looks like Wonder Woman is starting to build this army around her now that she is the god of war to take on the firstborn and sort of restore a less a-hole-ish person to be king of Olympus. So that's kind of just what's going on in Wonder Woman right now. I'm sort of curious to see how this goes and how Diana deals with taking on that mantle, since, like I've mentioned before, she's not really carrying the Wonder Woman mantle all that well. But the art in this is really, really good. Again, it's Cliff Chiang doing it. He's fantastic. He has this really kind of high fashion sort of 60s mod style going on in this that is really, really cool. And I think is probably a lot of the appeal of this book. But Wonder Woman 29, if you're a Wonder Woman fan, again, maybe not your thing. If you just want to read a good Greek mythology story, worth checking out. Before I get to Marvel, I'm going to jump over to IDW, and I picked up Samaurai Jack number 6. I haven't been following this book, but I've been on sort of a Samaurai Jack kick lately, been watching through the TV show again, and I'm pretty much convinced Samaurai Jack is one of the best stories that's ever been told. It's just kind of genius in how it's set up, in that it's very episodic, and there's an alpha point, an omega point, there's a beginning and an end. I mean, we never got to see the end, but we know someday Jack is going to triumph over Aku and the forces of darkness and blah blah blah. But there's an infinite amount of stories that can be told in between those 2 points, and so Samaurai Jack as a concept could conceivably go on forever, especially because time travel is involved too. So in that sense, it's almost better suited to the comic book medium than like Batman or Spider-Man, where you have to throw in an Infinite Crisis or a New 52 or One More Day or something to kind of, I guess, bring things back and roll the clock back a little bit and de-age the characters, because things go on, and Batman's had a handful of Robins at this point, and Yeah, it doesn't really make sense that they would all fit within 5 years, but yeah. Samaurai Jack, though, another thing about it is it was always a very visual show, and they played around with the aspect ratio a lot, and like panel and panel, or like screen within screen, and split screen, and all kinds of stuff. That was very reminiscent of comic book panels. So a big part of the reason that I picked this one up this week is just because I wanted to see how that show translated into comics, and I was kind of disappointed. I liked the story. The story was we get a return of the Scotsman, who was kind of a fun character that was voiced by John DiMaggio in the first season of Samaurai Jack, in this cool kind of episode where there's this gigantic rope bridge, and it goes on for days and days worth of walk. You can't see to the other side. And Jack is walking across, and he runs into this giant Scotsman guy, and they kind of fight and then become friends. Basically, we see him again in this, but he's been turned into a woman by some evil leprechaun guys, which was kind of cool. But the paneling stuff that I mentioned didn't really translate, or at least the artist has chosen not to do it that way, and I think that's a huge loss. Paneling was just kind of boring and generic in this, and I really didn't care for it. Also, the show itself was 22 minutes, and given that it was such a visual show and it often took time to linger upon visual things, I thought that it would translate really nicely into 22 pages of comic book, and it didn't really. This is part 1 of, I think, 2, maybe 3, I'm not sure. This was not a complete episodic story, and that was a big disappointment to me. We don't see enough of just kind of like one and done comics, and given like everything that I said, that it should, at least in theory, translate really well to a single issue of a comic that would be split into 2. This was not as good as I'd hoped. It was not kind of what I expected it to be. So Samaurai Jack in comics, I'm sort of sorry to say, it was a disappointment. I can't really recommend this. I mean, the story was not bad. It felt like the show, but I just didn't. All of the other things, the trappings and how the storytelling works, didn't translate really at all, and just, yeah, I'm disappointed. What I was not disappointed with, though, this week was a lot of my Marvel titles, and the first one I'm going to tackle is Miss Marvel #2. I reviewed the #1 in my very first episode of BCLDR, and I've kind of been waiting for this to come up again because I really liked it. Again, this riffs on the whole classic Marvel teen hero early Spider-Man kind of a thing, and boy is it ever good. Kamala Khan, of course, has to deal with sort of the regular stuff that I guess all of us to some extent as geeks had to deal with, in the not fitting in thing. But it's kind of taken to a whole nother level because she's from immigrant parents, she's Pakistani American, she's a Muslim. She doesn't fit into the kind of typical conventional waspy kind of American culture. So there's that whole layer to it too. And but we get to see here, the end of last issue, the big kind of reveal was she gets powers from the Terrigen Mist. She's an Inhuman, and her, I guess, ability is to change her body. She's sort of a shapeshifter, but she can like change her like density and size and everything, and we get a lot of funny moments in here with her trying to master her powers. But at the end of last issue, she had been wishing that she was more like her hero, Carol Danvers, who is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman, and she transforms into her as Miss Marvel in the classic kind of black and yellow costume. And she's sort of like freaking out, and she realizes that's not what she wants, which is really great. But she uses her powers to save her friends in this. And we get this quote from the Quran in this, which I think is going to be basically her line, her with great power comes great responsibility. And that's, like if you kill one person, it's as if you've killed all of humankind. And if you save one person, it's as if you saved all of humankind. And that's going to be, I think, her motivation for being a hero. And she gets a kick out of it, and she realizes that she did the right thing, and that's the important thing in this. And so I'm really excited to see where this goes, because this is just, like I said, it's classic Marvel. It's really well written. The art is gorgeous. It's just beautiful to look at. This is one of Marvel's coolest books, and I'm really liking this character. She's a super nerd, kind of like all of us, and like she writes Avengers fanfic on the internet. Like, how cool is that? She's just kind of the perfect character for the modern day and for any day really, and I love it. I am kind of worried because it feels like a lot of these more diverse characters who are really awesome don't tend to have a lot of life beyond their original creative teams, but because like Batwoman over at DC sort of suffered a similar thing once Greg Rucka was off the book. It just wasn't the same, and now that J.H. Williams isn't even on it anymore, it's just kind of gone down this terrible route, and I'm not even reading it anymore. But hopefully Kamala Khan can stick around. We're just in the beginning of her story though, so at least even if she doesn't stick, we're going to have a little bit more of her story to see. So I'm really excited for it going forward. Miss Marvel #2, definitely pick it up. One of my favorite books this week. Daredevil has moved over to San Francisco now, and Daredevil #1 was out this week. Captain Logan has presumably already reviewed it for you. But Daredevil Road Warrior #4 also came out this week, and that story finishes off the story in between Daredevil in New York versus San Francisco. And basically the reveal last time was the villain was the Thinker, who I think familiar with. But basically I said the guy that Daredevil had been tracking was a shapeshifter. He was kind of one of the Thinker's adaptoid sort of robots. Basically like a Mazo over at DC. Same kind of deal. But the Thinker basically has this cool room that he has to fight Daredevil in, and like all these adaptoids kind of appear out of the walls and the floor and everything and fight Daredevil. This is kind of depressing, especially for Mark Waid Daredevil, how this ends. I won't really reveal too much, but Matt has to sort of deal with this, with the adaptoid that he'd been tracking, taking out his master and creator. And there's some cool, Matt having to use his brains to defeat the enemy in this, which I really, really liked, but it also does get very kind of freaky and depressing. But this is an Infinite comic again. I love this format for digital. It's just really uses the medium to its utmost. It's just amazing. If you haven't picked up all of Daredevil Road Warrior, I definitely recommend it. Now that Daredevil has started, it didn't tie in as much as I maybe expected it to between the two kind of chapters in Daredevil's life, but it's still very, very good, and we do get to see some good character stuff with Matt in this. So I definitely recommend it. All 4 issues are out now, so if you haven't jumped onto digital yet, this is I think the book to do it with. This is fantastic. Daredevil Road Warrior. My last book this week was Superior Spider-Man, the annual #2. This one was okay. Thankfully, it was not one of those annuals that you absolutely need to read to know what's going on in the story. It's not just like the next chapter in whatever book was going on. It does feed into everything that's been going on in Superior Spider-Man, but it is still somewhat standalone. It just shows a different side of it. Mostly this focuses on Ben Urich and him kind of dealing with the fact that his nephew was like a goblin, and it kind of deals with the fact that the goblin stuff has always sort of been metaphorical for addiction to some extent, and the bulk of this is sort of about whether or not he should let Phil go, and whether or not Phil is the same person anymore. And he doesn't want to give up on him, and he kind of has to make the choice. There's of course, Spider-Man does show up in this. It's not totally about Ben Urich, but there's a cool fight in this, and I know that is the focus, though, is kind of the addiction stuff. There's kind of, I guess, a backup in this, too, that focuses on the Wraith, who I just kind of skimmed it because I'm not too familiar with that character, really, but some cool stuff kind of happened with it. I won't spend too much time talking about it. It's kind of one of those things, if you've been following and you want to read more, you can read it. If you pass on this one, you're not missing a whole lot either. It's just kind of a decent story thrown in the middle here, which is what annuals really should be. So I was worried it wouldn't be that, but it was, so I'm kind of okay with it. That does it for me for this week, though. There'll be a lot of cool books coming out next week. I'm kind of weirdly really excited for the new Ghost Rider book. It's a new version of the character. I'm not really familiar with the old version of the character at all. It looks kind of 70s and Knight Rider-ish, so that should be fun. So I'll definitely be covering that next week. But I guess we'll also see the wrap-up of the Adventures of Superman story too. But until then, I'm Alex, a superhero enthusiast, and back to you, Captain Logan.
Thanks as always for your reviews and insights, superhero enthusiast, and I want to thank everybody for watching. If you're ever in the Kansas City area, be sure to check out Elite Comics in Overland Park, Kansas. That is my absolute favorite store. They are great, and they help us out with the show, so we want to thank them for that. If you ever want to send us anything to review on the Comic Book Vault, you can always send that to our P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. We had a great week of comics this week. I had a lot of fun reading stuff and reviewing it for you. Hope you had a lot of fun too, and I'll be with you once again next week with lots more books, lots more reviews, and let me know what you think of this new format, by the way. Trying the green screen thing again. I wanted we got some new equipment. I think it looks better, and let me know if you like it. And anyway, thanks again for watching. I'm Captain Logan, wishing you happy reading.